A second COVID vaccine on the brink of approval. The cyber hack of government computers that's being called one of the biggest intel failures in history. And Love Hate 8, plus a call for your end of year submissions. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Friday, December 18th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Happy Freitag, Jill. So yesterday I went on
I
my
don't know
walk.
why that makes me laugh even still.
all these months and years later, I'm glad that I can still make you laugh. What was I going to say? Oh, so I went on my walk yesterday, and I went outside, and I said, "Oh, it's going to be so nice to see this winter wonderland of snow." And sure enough, it was already disgusting. It was just the snow was black and gray, and it's just amazing how in New York City, it's like a minute after the snow falls, it's already gross.
That's how it goes. That's kind of the situation in the city with snow. Out here, though, it's like a winter wonderland. I have to say, it's so pretty.
I know that's the nice part about living in the burbs, I gotta say.
All right, let's get to some news. Moderna's coronavirus vaccine could receive emergency approval as soon as today after an independent FDA panel gave the go-ahead. So this would put a second highly effective vaccine into the country's supply within days. The Moderna shot is similar to the Pfizer shot. It uses the same groundbreaking mRNA technology and requires 2 doses 3 weeks apart, but it doesn't require that ultra cold storage, which would make the doses easier to distribute. Vice President Pence is going to get vaccinated on live TV this morning in an attempt to reassure vaccine skeptics. President-elect Biden will follow next week, at which point many top government officials, from the House Speaker to Supreme Court justices, will start to get inoculated.
This Moderna news, we expected it, but doesn't make it any less exciting. Fully expecting that approval to come at some point today. And unlike the Pfizer vaccine, this vaccine actually hasn't been in use anywhere yet, aside from these clinical trials. But there's no reason to think that it would be any different from the efficacy of the Pfizer vaccine, which is in fact what this panel said last night. Moderna says they have 20 million doses ready to go this month, 80 million more in Q1. The government has purchased 200 million doses from them, which is enough to vaccinate 100 million people. So we'll have these 2 shots. Like I said earlier this week, I think Johnson & Johnson is going to be one of the dark horses, and we expect some news from them sometime in January. So things are starting to ramp up, which is great.
I know that President Trump has had COVID, so he probably doesn't need the vaccine right now. I think in terms of just trying to reassure the public, I think him getting it would probably be more effective than Mike Pence.
No question. And from what I've read, what I read, Jill, was that he's just sort of like checked out on all of this stuff right now. He's kind of like he's still focused on the election, which is really a shame because the vaccine is, this could be sort of his legacy. And I'm with you because I think that there's probably a fairly significant overlap between vaccine skeptics and his hardcore base. And I think seeing him roll up his sleeve on live TV and get that shot would be would go a long way.
We talked yesterday about California. It's bad and it's getting worse. 3% ICU capacity in the state, 0% in Southern California. 2 people are dying an hour in Los Angeles County of the virus, and it's pretty bleak everywhere else in that state. Of course, the public health officials once again pleading with people not to travel for the upcoming holidays.
So have you heard this idea that's being floated? I made a point to discuss this today because it's like my new thing. I love this. This idea that Biden should declare a week-long national holiday sometime next summer or fall, when this is all behind us, God willing, sort of as a way to like make up for all the holidays missed, right? And so he could even come out and say like, look, don't travel for Christmas. When this is done, we're going to have like a week-long like VE Day celebration almost. like a Corona V-Day, right? And just, all of the stuff that you missed with your family, that's when you do it. And it could be this just like amazing, like national celebration. Who knows? I highly doubt that'll happen, because stuff like that is always too good to be true. But it seems like that would be such a great, such a great thing to do for him coming into this, coming into the presidency.
I love it. Maybe a week around July 4th or Memorial Day or something.
Right? Just get
Hopefully,
together.
hopefully by then, yes.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
barbecue, just like, say goodbye to this horrible pandemic.
Carla, we want to mention a story that we haven't touched on this week, but the scope of a major hack of the federal government computers just keeps getting worse. The Kremlin is said to be behind the breach, and it managed to infiltrate the systems of the Energy Department, the National Nuclear Security Administration, the agencies that control the nuclear stockpile. Investigators have found suspicious activity on networks belonging to the Los Alamos National Laboratory. That's the highly secretive nuclear facility known as the birthplace of the atom bomb. President Trump is yet to publicly acknowledge this cyber attack, which started in March, Carlo, and was only recently uncovered.
Yeah, this story is really starting to freak me out a little bit. We heard the first reports of this earlier in the week. It sounded bad. Every day it sounds worse. It really does sound like this is just a catastrophic defense failure. And it's insane that we haven't heard a peep from the White House on this. And there's not that much to add, because we just don't know the extent of what of the systems that they got into, what information they got. We haven't even seen evidence to suggest it's Russia. I mean, I don't doubt that it was, but it would be nice to see some sort of evidence that it was the Kremlin behind this. But yeah, the fact that the entire federal government almost was part of this cyber hack, and we didn't know about it for 8 months. Yeah, that seems kind of bad. I don't really know, I don't know what else to opine on there until we have a better sense of what they got.
They did it. The hackers apparently used this third-party system. Right. So it's called Orion SolarWinds, which is just this, it's like a software company. So basically when they did their automatic update on your computer, on computers, the government uses their software. The hackers were able to infiltrate the computers through that. So that's kind of how they missed it. And apparently it's so complicated, and like they don't even know what they're looking for. And I was listening to a security analyst on ABC News, and he was saying, if you were the CIA director, right, and you got home and your front door was open and somebody said, okay, there was a burglar in here, or somebody got into your house.
Right.
And you'd be nervous, right? But if they said, okay, but they've been here actually for the past 9 months, you'd be like, wait a minute, you can't just go now and change your locks. Now you're thinking, okay, well, what have they been stealing and watching for the past 9 months? Because they've been in the house for that long.
Yeah.
So it's like, at this point, is the damage done? I mean, I don't think we can underestimate how big of a deal this is. Yeah, they don't even know, right? They don't know what they've taken. They don't know. There's so many questions here. And again, it's been going on for almost a year.
It's and it's just, I mean, I remember there's, back in the post 9/11 era, when this country was like losing its mind, they spent tens of billions of dollars on this system that they called Einstein, which was supposed to sort of be this like massive cyber defense platform that was supposed to monitor, if anything like this happened, and it clearly just did not work. So, that's not good.
Yeah, and it's likely to be a problem that is around for a long time, well into the Biden administration. Speaking of which, President-elect Biden has picked Congresswoman Deb Haaland of New Mexico to be the Secretary of Interior. If confirmed, she'll be the first Native American to ever have a cabinet position. Michael Regan, North Carolina's top environmental regulator, is Biden's choice to lead the EPA. He's going to be the first Black man to run the agency. Brenda Mallory, a former Obama official, will become the first Black chair of the White House Council on Environmental Quality. So these appointments suggest the administration will be really focusing on environmental justice issues, like the effects that pollution has had on minority communities.
Yes, Holland I think is a great choice. I don't know that much about her, but she is a citizen of a Native American tribe, and obviously the Secretary of the Interior sort of controls the Native American land as well as public parks and forests. Although I shouldn't say obviously, because I don't know. I used to think that the Interior Secretary was like the White House decorator. I didn't really know what that job actually did until I got older. But Holland is also an interesting choice politically because she's going to leave open a House seat and cut the Democrats' already slim margin in the House. Really, when Nancy Pelosi needs her caucus to be as strong as possible. Holland has a safe Democratic seat, so she won't a Republican would be very unlikely to take that seat, but there still has to be a special election, which is going to take months. So it was interesting to see. I think Pelosi probably said, that we'll let her go just because she's such a groundbreaking choice. By the way, I did want to mention President-elect Biden. He has no events on his schedule today because today is the 40th anniversary of his first wife and daughter dying in that terrible car accident. So obviously our thoughts go out to him on just an awful day in his life, I'm sure.
Now to a little housekeeping, I guess. If you're having a hard time keeping up with all of the news these days, well, that's of course why you listen to us. But if you want to diversify your media diet, check out the Now This Brief. Now This Brief is a daily news podcast. It delivers the top 5 stories in under 5 minutes. You can wake up to the latest news, focusing on issues that matter most to you. That's every weekday morning. Now back to some other news here on our podcast. For millions of out-of-work Americans, a new stimulus deal in Washington cannot come soon enough. Another 935,000 people filed for jobless benefits last week. Now, after slowing in the fall, layoffs and furloughs are once again accelerating to levels that we haven't seen in past recessions. More than 20 million people are collecting some form of unemployment heading into the new year.
That was a bad number that printed yesterday morning when you were on the air. But yeah, so
for 2 weeks in a row now, Carlo, it's been pretty bad.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, we get sort of like we don't even realize 930,000 people a week out losing their jobs. It's like insane. But again, these are the people who are going to get the extra help if and when the stimulus package is agreed on and passed. The word is that they're still trying to hammer this thing out. It could go into the weekend. We'll see. I sort of thought they were going to get it done yesterday. I have to say, I was incensed when I read the other day that there were some Republicans in Congress who were trying to hold this thing up because they were concerned about people, quote unquote, double dipping. This idea that, someone would get the $600 stimulus check as well as the enhanced unemployment benefits, which would be $300 a week. God forbid, right? Like, it's incredible. But some Republicans also trying to kneecap the Fed's lending facilities, which is now part of why this thing hasn't been done yet. That's according to the New York Times this morning. I'm not sure why the reason would be to get the Fed involved here, other than to try and hurt Biden's ability to manage, what's going to, I think, be a slow and very complicated economic recovery.
Well, apparently, one of the reasons that this is able to even pass at all right now, in terms of that, in terms of actual stimulus checks and these enhanced benefits, is because of the Senate runoff in Georgia. And the 2 Republicans are in Congress currently, Loeffler and Perdue. So it's been tough for them, apparently, on the campaign trail to kind of justify why there's what the holdup has been in getting the stimulus. So I think this gives them a little bit of a talking point. Mitch McConnell is said to be thinking, you know what, I'd rather give in on this, but potentially keep the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, it's so like crazy to any politician in this country right now who isn't spending all of their time trying to get checks to people who are out of work and businesses that are hurting. They should just walk into the ocean. Like, seriously, you guys, you don't deserve to have a leadership position if you cannot get this done. I did want to mention one thing. The Washington Post reporting today that White House aides intervened yesterday to prevent President Trump from demanding that Congress approve checks of $2,000 a person. Trump said he wanted these $2,000 stimulus checks out, basically outflanking the Democrats on the left, which is hilarious in its own right. But this is what I've never understood about President Trump, and I never will. The whole idea behind his presidency has been this, like, he's not a politician, right? He doesn't listen to people. He trusts his gut. He makes decisions like a businessman. And on issues like this, he just sort of rolls over, or he doesn't get involved to begin with. And I've just never understood it. He's right to be pushing for a bigger deal. And I wish that he would sort of use his bully pulpit to force Congress's hand. And I don't know, why is he listening to aides at this point? Who cares what they say? I am more and more of the belief that his disinterest in the stimulus negotiations this fall is almost certainly what lost him the election to begin with. And that was because he listened to aides and he listened to Mitch McConnell and people like that.
Meanwhile, Google being sued by a group of state prosecutors, the second major antitrust lawsuit to be filed against the company this week and the third in the last 2 months. The most recent suit accuses Google of using its dominance in search to muscle out smaller competitors. The one before that focused on Google's dominance in digital advertising. And the one before that, the big suit filed by the feds, that was a broader matter accusing Google of acting as an illegal monopoly.
Taken together, yeah, these lawsuits represent really, I think, probably the biggest existential threat to Google's business model since it started. And what they really show, if you're not following this closely, is just that this backlash against big tech is legit, and it's really, it's growing, and it's going to be fought in the courts, which means it's going to take forever. But there's real damage that could be done to these companies like Google. Google could really be royally screwed, I think, maybe more so than any of the other ones. But it'll take a while to see the fallout. But this is, I did actually start, Jill. One of my New Year's resolutions I'm working on is to try and detangle myself from some of these tech panopticons. So I've started to use this search engine called DuckDuckGo, which doesn't track you. I think it's called DuckDuckGo. But anyway, it's pretty good. It's not as good as Google. And I think it's going to be very hard to unwind from the Google, the Google all-seeing eye. But I'm going to try.
Let us know. I mean, that's an interesting one, Carlo. I kind of like where your head is at with this, and keep us posted, please, because I would love to do it too.
For me, Google's the hardest one because it's like, you have Gmail, calendars, all of my stuff is on the Google Cloud, right? It's much easier for me to unwind from Facebook because I don't really use Instagram. I don't have a Facebook account. But Google's the hard one. I don't think it can be done, but I'm going to at least give it a shot.
Okay, before we do a little love, hate, ate, we want to hear from you, listeners out there. What are some things that you loved, hated, and ate this year? We're going to pick some of the best ones and air them next week before Christmas. If we get enough, we're going to even do a special podcast on Christmas Eve. Okay, now for our love, hate, ate today.
Remember, Need2Know, the number 2, at cheddar.com. You send us those love, hate, ates there. We will collect them. Need2Know at cheddar.com.
All right, one thing that we love, a snow day. Let's hope that remote learning doesn't kill off this perk of childhood even after the pandemic. I don't think it will, Carlo, because at least the school districts where I know people on Long Island, they all got snow days this year.
Yeah, I'm glad that we talked about this week. A lot of people sent both of us one of these letters from a school district. I forget where it is now, that was going viral this week, where they basically were just like, we're not getting rid of the snow day. This is an important part of childhood, and it was really touching, I think. So I'm hoping that you're right in this. We'll still get our snow days. Our kids will still get their snow days, assuming there's snow in the future. One thing that we hate, bad user design. And I'm thinking right now about the iPhone in particular. The calendar app on the iPhone, I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but the new calendar app doesn't, how like in the past iOS versions, they had like this, whenever you had to input a time, there was like a little scroll to do it, and you just sort of like flipped it to get to the right time. That's gone now. And now you have to like input the numbers on the keypad. Anyway, it's terrible, but it's not as bad as the screen that you get when you're on the phone and a new call comes in. Maybe I'm having like a mental problem here, and I'm having a hard time understanding these prompts. But if you look at the screen, if you're on the phone and somebody calls you, the screen that comes up on the iPhone is so complicated to figure out what to do. I just don't know why it's so confusing. Apple should be better than this. And by the way, it's not just Apple. Google, they redesigned all their icons. We were just talking about Google a minute ago. now you can't tell them apart. The Gmail icon, the Docs icon, the Drive icon, they're all like multicolored. I don't like when things are over engineered. It's a big pet peeve of mine. And that's just another great example. Like, did the Google Doc icon need to change? Was somebody out there like complaining that it was, too boring or something? I'll never get that.
And it's interesting because Apple usually, which you started about talking about, Apple's usually great at design, and it makes it pretty intuitive. Okay, one thing that we ate, Carlo, a lot of Hanukkah gelt. It's chocolate, but I think that the best part is actually that it comes in, it's supposed to be coins or money, so it comes in a gold wrapper. So I feel like I am like at Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, like, and got the golden ticket every time I open it up. So
I always used to like
a lot of Hanukkah gelt.
Yes, that's great. That's fantastic. I was going to say just pizza. We've been eating pizza like crazy in this house. I don't know about you.
Yes, it is the perfect quarantine food for sure. All right, guys, that's what you need to know for Friday, December 18th.
Have a great weekend, everyone.